Hey everyone, welcome to the Ignite podcast. I am your host, Samantha Baker, founder of Heat Strategic Agency. And you're going to want to stay tuned because this podcast is where executives discuss strategic marketing to spark growth and profitability. We go beyond buzzwords to explore how strategic marketing empowers executive leadership, transforms go-to-market motion, and positions businesses to win in increasingly complex, regulated, and trust-sensitive markets. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Ignite podcast, where bold ideas meet unstoppable execution. And today we're turning up the heat with a guest whose name is recognized for strategic growth, international scale, and marketing that actually drives the business forward. Ariella Shohum is a global C-level marketing strategist with over 30 years of B2B experience across the spectrum, from VC-backed startups to public and PE-owned powerhouses. She's not just fluent in marketing, she's fluent in growth, repeatedly scaling companies across the highly regulated industries like healthcare, cyber, and AI. But Ariella's impact isn't just in her results, it's in how she gets them. Known for building powerhouse teams, igniting go-to-market strategies, and aligning revenue functions with surgical precision, she's a rare blend of performance marketer, data strategist, and inspirational leader. She's helped Israeli tech break into global markets, led marketing through Series A to D, and has perfected the art of international expansion in some of the world's toughest verticals. Oh, and did we mention she's also a loving mom of three, an avid runner, and a core Pilates enthusiast? If you're a founder, a CMO, or just someone who believes marketing should be a revenue engine, not a cost center, you won't want to miss this conversation. So let's dive in. Hi, Ariella. How are you?
Hi, Samantha. I'm very well. How are you?
Good. We are so excited to have you in one of our first episodes of the series. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited as well.
So we have a slew of questions that you're excited to discuss. But before we do that, since it's summertime when we're recording this, I'm just talking and thinking about adventures right now because, as you can imagine, our family is ready to pack our suitcases and head to the beach in a couple of weeks. But I'm curious, have you gone on any big adventures this year, or do you have any in store?
So my kids are grown already, and so my daughter lives in Manhattan, so she's working, and my middle child has just started med school, so they already started school.
Awesome.
And our youngest is away with his grandparents, and so we actually not planning anything for summer. The only time we can get everyone together is over New Year's, and we're planning a trip to India for 2 weeks.
Oh my
I've
goodness.
never been. Have you been to India?
No. So I'm curious, how did you come up with that idea? Is it on your bucket list?
So it was actually not on my bucket list.
Okay.
But apparently not on any of my children's bucket list. But my husband's previous place of employment was with an Indian company, and it actually spent 2 weeks in India. And he said that he loved the fact that when you visit India as a foreigner from a probably wealthy country,
hmm
you see things that you're pretty surprised to see. And
Right.
he said that even though it looks like these people don't have the means or are not wealthy, they're really happy people and kind people. And he thought this would be such an important lesson for our kids. And so
Oh,
that's what we're doing. We're
I
going
love
to
that.
immerse ourselves in this and see how it goes.
I love that. I would love to catch up with you after that to learn more about that because
We
that
will.
sounds like a great plan and I think that's gonna be life-changing for you.
I agree. And so we actually even met with a tour guide to just start kick it off and understand where we're going. And he interviewed each one of my kids, and it was really surprising. Like I said, my youngest is a rising senior and my oldest is 26. And so they each had their thoughts. Like some said, look, we just want to relax, we're working really hard. And actually my youngest said, I do want to relax, but I do want to see. I want to go to a market and see people. I want to see the Taj Mahal. It's one of the wonders of the world. I want to also immerse myself in this. And I was very happy with that. So I'm looking forward to it, even though I am apprehensive, but I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Oh my goodness. I'm excited for you. Oh, that's a great adventure. That's probably one of the top ones I've heard thus
We'll
far.
catch up later. We'll catch up. I'll let you know all about it.
Okay, so I know everyone is here to hear about your expertise and your brilliance. So let's just dive in. You've led marketing through nearly every stage of company growth, from early stage startups to global scale. What first drew you into B2B tech marketing, and how has your journey evolved over the 3 decades?
Wow, thank you. Great question. So I'm an Australian. I immigrated to Israel when I was 8, and I did my undergrad in what I thought would not be hard, which was English, which was actually very, very hard, and East Asian studies. So I studied languages in general, but and I'm very analytical. Like I studied physics and maths at school. And so when I entered the Israeli sort of tech sphere, developed these startups all the time. And so at the time, they looked for someone who spoke fluent English and had a degree. So that's how I started. But I discovered pretty quickly that I had this ability to understand tech and translate it into language that buyers understand. So it's not just about the feature function, it's actually about what creates action amongst an audience, right? And so then how do you decide who the audience is, and how do you make them move out of their comfort zone and make a decision? So that's sort of how I started. And I lived in that realm for probably, I would say, about 10 years, the first sort of decade of my career, because Israeli startups at the time, this was in the late 1990s, sort of beginning of 2000, there were so many of these startups, and then you would join them. I would establish the marketing org. Some of them were acquired, some of them disappeared, and some of them sort of I continued for a few more years. And so that was sort of the beginning of my career.
That's amazing. So, with so much noise in the B2B space, people do often misjudge what marketing leaders really do. And especially if you're coming in as the first marketer in some of these companies, I'm very curious your thoughts about misconceptions about the value of marketing, especially if you're going from the first marketer to scaling and maybe even successful exit.
That's such a good question. When people ask me about this, I tell this story. This was already further down the line. I'd already joined a company that had just gone through a hostile takeover, acquired by a PE firm, a large cybersecurity company. And we were at the 40 million mark, and I was on the management team, right? I already had a team that sort of did a few things. I came in to sort of try and improve the performance. And I was sitting with the R&D managers, all my sort of C-suite peers, and we were all presenting. And then, our manager said, "Okay, any questions?" And someone said, "I have a question for marketing." I was like, what am I going to say? And they said, "Can we have t-shirts for the Indian office?"
Mm,
And that is I think there are many defining moments, but that was one of the defining moments where I said, marketing, this is my mission, to explain that marketing is more than a pretty face, right?
mhm.
It's a revenue generator. It is the door opener. It is what drives a business. And I think that's the main misconception, that marketing had probably evolved, if we try to look at this historically, as a maybe sales aid, right? Because everyone markets. So everyone thinks they know to market. And we all market ourselves, and we date, we meet new people, we network. So everyone thinks they can market, which is totally fine. But then when you think of it from a business perspective, it's like you said, it's so varied. Like, where do I put that? And so the in my mind, usually the misconception is it's fluffy awareness.
Mhm.
And then as you progress and you speak to people and you say, who's deciding on your pricing,
Mm.
who's segmenting your market, and they're like, I don't know. I thought it would be sales. I thought it would be the CEO. Like, and you're like, well, it could be a CEO if there's no one else, but that's product marketing. And then, who's driving demand, who's making people take an action. Oh yes, and it's a lot more than, a blue t-shirt. So
Oh
I
yeah.
think that was for me that defining moment. And I've always been super passionate about that, about measuring outcomes to what marketing does, and being very methodical about, at least in my mind, the sort of three buckets of marketing: the awareness side,
Mhm.
the demand gen side, and the product marketing side.
That is so interesting. And also it helped it kind of I took a deep breath when you gave me that experience because I've had something like that happen to me and it can be discouraging when you're trying to, make sure that your team, your whole team is being valued for what they're worth and their skill sets because there's so much psychology behind marketing as well and thinking 3 steps ahead. You have to do the job right. And I had an experience where someone expressed to me that they value marketing so much and they said because once we didn't have marketing and there was no one to steam the linens at the trade show for our table. And I'll never forget that moment, but it was like a kick in the gut, but it was also so motivating at the same time because as a marketing leader for my team, I value them so much and value them so much that I didn't want them to be seen like that. And so it is just even today is such a struggle, but
It
you
really is, and
gotta,
I love, and I feel for you, right? That kick in the gut,
yeah.
that's exactly how I felt. And I love that you said that there's so much psychology into it because when people say, what does marketing do? I say it's make people take action. That's it. It's to make people take action. There's so much psychology in
Yeah.
getting people to come out of their comfort zone and take an action. Even if it's something they want, like even if it's a Coca-Cola that's already branded, how do you make them take action now? Like
Hmm.
there is so much in it that is so heavy and serious.
Hmm.
It is just really, like you said, discouraging that it is reduced to ironing linen. Oh
Yes.
my
And, we're rabbit holing a bit here, but let's do it.
God.
Whenever I think about psychology, so I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this. You're thinking about the messaging, you're thinking about the target audiences and the personas. And one of my favorite things that I did in college was I had a minor in ethnography, which was the co-culture, different co-cultures of
Wow.
people. And I found that, even whenever you have, I'm going to pick on sales because marketing always picks on sales, but I do like a lot of sales folks out there. You guys are great. But you know, it isn't just doing the work of the persona work, the target audiences, because these cultures and these people, they each have their own individual values. And what do they feel that what is important to that individual person? What do they value? And so it's even like what marketers are able to put on paper. There's just so much more in our heads behind that. And I don't know how to articulate this very well, Ariella. Like, do you know
No,
what
but
I'm
you're right. Like I was preparing our board slides today, right? And again, I've done this again, again, again. Every company, you prepare your board slides. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to talk about it?
saying?
And my CEO said, and she's actually a very sort of mature CEO, right? I've worked with 28-year-old CEOs, and she's a mature CEO, and she's worked in marketing and business development and to become a CEO. And she said, look, the board just need to see the numbers. Let's just say, these are the amount of MQLs, these are the SQLs, and I've only been there like for 5 months. I said, well, I think it's important, but I do think it's important that we educate the board on what it is that goes into bringing these MQLs, because of course they want to see numbers and I want to commit to numbers, but I would need budget, for example, to create a lot of that top of funnel work, right? That the
Mhm.
exact explanation that you're giving. I have persona cards, but each persona is making a decision for a different reason. And
Mhm.
if we can't customize how we approach these people, then it's not a once and done, right? It's such targeted marketing that even if it's broad,
Mhm.
you need to show that to the board so that they can then understand why you're asking for more money, for more resources and everything. It's not just, yes, miraculously you're going to bring in an MQL. So I
Yeah,
agree with you. It's very hard to articulate, but you're right. That's all down to the psyche of how people take action. Absolutely.
this is a great conversation. Okay, I'm going to go to my next one, or else I could keep going on that. You've driven growth across regulated industries like AI, cyber, and healthcare, some of the toughest markets to penetrate. What's one of the most defining strategic decisions you've made in those environments?
Wow. So when I joined my previous company, ADOC, in January 2018, the company had just received their FDA approval for their first algorithm that was targeted at radiologists. So within the United States healthcare industry, and we were selling directly to radiologists, so selling directly into health systems. I think it's the hardest market I've ever sold into. And one of the Okay, I have two strategic things to talk about. So, one of our go to market thoughts were okay, we're coming into an ultra regulated market. It's really hard to sell into healthcare. We have a few routes to market, and I'll just say what the company does. It developed an algorithm that knows to detect an abnormality in a CT scan. So if you imagine, and specifically for acute conditions and time-sensitive conditions. So if you imagine, I don't know, a car accident, and there are 3 or 4 people in the accident, and they're all brought into the ER, they're all in various conscious levels, so you can't really talk to them and understand what's wrong with them, and they're all going through, scans. A CT, for example, for this condition probably would be a head scan, and then they're just added to a queue so that a radiologist can look at them. Now, obviously, the radiologist is looking at the, emergency room exams faster because they're all stat, but they're all stat. So you
Hmm.
don't really know which one has a brain bleed, which is one FDA clearance, and which doesn't. And so what we did, we were able to prioritize that brain bleed so that the radiologist could see it first. Amazing company, still exists. Actually, just got another round of investment now with
Wow.
Nvidia being involved, but let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
But the reason I talk about it is we were thinking, okay, so how would we approach the market? So we were able to identify an abnormality in a CT scan. So maybe we should join the CT machines. Philips, Siemens, they've been around for a million years. Radiologists buy from them. It's already a line item. Why not? That was one. The other option was, why don't we connect to maybe not that hardware side, maybe we connect to a software side, like they have programs that help them
Hmm.
look, whatever. But again, channel to market um, versus going direct. And we had to think a lot about this because our competitors were actually doing that. They were going with partners, and we were like, oh, and we said, you know what, we're going to go direct. So I think that was a very strategic decision because it takes guts to actually believe that we can go direct. And it panned out very well because, well, first of all, our competitors did not succeed with their approach. So that was
Hmm.
one thing that was very sad because they had technology that was very good. But what it taught us was the level of integration needed to make an algorithm run in a live environment. And I know it sounds very techy, but today, when everyone's talking about AI, and there are every year there are about 300 new FDA regulated AI solutions for something, right? So it becomes very confusing as a consumer.
Hmm.
Which AI am I going to buy? And AI, and I'm going to talk about other strategic thought in a minute. But we learned that we're actually, again, we had by now 20 FDA clearances for 20 algorithms that are running in parallel. And so we know how to plug them all in and make them all work together. And if we had worked with, a Philips or a Siemens, or if we had worked with some other channel, we would have never learned that. And we would not have been as close as we were to the customers to get to the success that we got to today. So that's one. And I think the other interesting point is that when I came in, there was still the narrative, and it's amazing to me that it's still the narrative today, will AI replace me? And for the radiologist, I mean, you think of it, you're like, really? What does a radiologist do? They just look at a scan and they find an abnormality. Like, why wouldn't a machine replace them? And it was on the other hand, and one of our other competitors said that. They were like, we're going to ignore the radiologist. We're going to sell directly to a different physician, let's say a neurologist, because radiologists can just be skipped over. And this was something that, I was very adamant about. And I said, but these are the people who are going to buy the solution.
Hmm.
I have to empower them. I can't alienate them, or I can't give them this fear that they're going to be replaced. And so our narrative was, it doesn't replace, it augments. And a radiologist with AI will probably replace a radiologist without AI. And it's not radiologist versus AI, it's radiologist with AI versus each alone. And I think that also ended up being a very, very strong message. So those are my two strategic decisions in a very
Oh
difficult.
my goodness.
Um,
That's so intriguing. And like I'm giggling over here because I actually ran a similar campaign in the accounting space.
oh, wow.
Before COVID, I worked for like a tech company to the accountant space and selling to accountants, and you're selling them like AI. And so like AI is not going to replace your job. And I had this one, this is going to sound so cheesy, but I had a robot that was like the face of the campaign, and my kids named him Bebop. And so here I am working all day and my kids run behind my computer. Oh, there's Bebop. But it's true because like AI is so it had a negative rap. Like it had just a bad reputation at first because people were so afraid of it, but it actually enhances people's jobs. And can you imagine like I bet the case studies in a product like that that you were selling have been phenomenal and probably so
No.
heartwarming as a marketing leader to.
Really.
It's gotta
I think
help.
working in healthcare, that was one, like, if we talk about challenging verticals, I think the challenge of the vertical is I mean the benefit that you feel outweighs the challenge
Oh,
because
for
you're
sure.
actually you're impacting people's lives. And that was, I mean, cybersecurity, you could sort of say in a roundabout way you are, but it's nothing like healthcare. Like healthcare, as hard as it is, I think many people are drawn to it because of the real impact that you feel on patients' lives. It's amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely. Oh, I love that. Okay, so you've built and scaled teams across continents. If you weren't leading global marketing today, what do you think you'd be pouring your passion to and expertise into instead?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's such a hard question. I love my job. I love marketing. If I wasn't a full-time marketer, I'd really want to consult and maybe be like I would never want to leave tech. I love it. I love how amazing people are and the ideas they come up with. So I'd stay in tech and either advise or sort of be part of a sort of thought tank. But if I had to go away from tech, I would probably be a National Geographic photographer.
Oh my goodness. So photography is also on your list from like mom and runner and
No,
Pilates.
I'm actually not a photographer, but I just did to National Geographic and David Attenborough, my middle son and I. This is our like only passion where we sit together and we're like waiting for the new David Attenborough movie to come out. I just think imagine traveling the world to photograph animals in their environment.
Yeah.
Just I'd love to do that.
That would be cool. That could be your, I mean, why not? You should sometime. Just try it.
Yeah, but you don't make any money. So I always think if you could
Okay.
choose one thing that wouldn't make any money, then do that. You
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, so with your experience in go-to-market strategy, sales and marketing alignment, and BDR excellence, what does successful marketing look like to you, and how do you define it beyond vanity metrics? I know we kind of already talked about this, but really honing into it a little bit more.
I think that I look at it out and in. I think internally it may sound like a cliche, but you alluded to it as well. You want your marketing team to feel that they're contributing to the actual growth of the business. And so to me, it's very important to be very, very transparent with my team. These are our goals, but this is how these goals are going to lead to our sort of success as a company. So I think that's very important. And obviously, it's important that everyone else knows that, but that's already. Um, and I think success in marketing I know it sounds funny, but it's the company's growth. I mean, I'm very proud of saying that I took ADOC, the previous company, from 0 to 40.
Hmm.
They had no one to do go to market when I joined. And I think when coming in, and of course, product developed the product, and of course, sales sold the product as well. But I think creating that swell, bringing in the interest, formalizing the messaging, to me, that's the indication when you start seeing growth. And when you get that recognition that people within the company know that marketing knows so much about how to advance the market. So I think that's probably, it's hard. You're right that it's hard to, I mean, we talked about actual metrics, but I think that's
Hmm.
it. To have my team feel that they understand how they're contributing to the growth of the market, that's my first. And then my second is that the company is actually showing some form of growth in any of the, realms that marketing owns.
Because you seem like a brilliant leader. What is your favorite part about leading people?
Well, empowerment. Again, I know it sounds cliche, but I want people to feel empowered to make their own decisions. And I think it's not as easy as it sounds because I
Yeah.
think many people come in and they're afraid when they're young and they haven't got experience. And I think there is so much potential hidden in everyone, I believe. I really do, that I don't want them to fear to come up with crazy ideas. And I want them to make a mistake. So empower someone to be able to make a mistake. Because imagine if people are scared to make mistakes, we're just going to continue doing the same old thing again, again, again. So I think that's my biggest at least goal is making my team feel empowered
Mhm.
across the board to succeed, to make mistakes, to be creative. I think that's my one. I'd be the proudest if my team said they feel empowered. I guess that's the answer.
That's amazing. That's very heartwarming, touching, but really wonderful for you to say as a leader and really respect. I give you so much respect for saying that because my experience is I've come into companies where teams have had very different leadership styles and they've been just totally afraid to raise their hand or speak up. And what that does to marketing is that prohibits them from being creative and it blocks them in from, you're just a service at that point, right? Um, and so also, whenever like what you define as a mistake is actually learning and that you put that in the data that doesn't work, so you're not going to do it again.
Exactly.
You need that.
You need that. Exactly. 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 And I agree with you. I think it's so I think I want to be the barrier from bad management. Like if I find and it's very stressful. Startups are very stressful. The
Yeah.
CEOs are going through crazy stuff. So I want to prevent that exposure if I can for my
Mhm.
team because I want to encourage mistake making and creativity. And I think but you're right, we all encounter management that doesn't empower us and makes us scared, and it's just going to kill a company. Like that's
Yeah.
bad culture. That's just bad culture.
Absolutely. And I stand behind that camaraderie in a marketing team is absolutely imperative. Now, you could say that's imperative on any team, and I'm sure it could be proven, but there's something about the creative energy behind a team who can rally together and just like riff on something and not feel judged because that's what gives you your biggest moments and your best campaigns. And what
Absolutely.
sounds crazy actually isn't because it's different and it's cool. And as you could tell, I love the teams that I've led, and I can tell from just looking at you and hearing your voice that you love the teams that you lead as well.
I have.
Thank you for
I
sharing.
do. And you know what the hardest part is that when you move on, you
Yeah.
leave them. You leave them. And it's really hard. I know people who actually manage to move around with some of their team members. I don't really know how they do it yet. I have never been able to do it. I always try, and it's
Yeah.
never the right time. And then I'm like, oh, how am I going to build my team again? It's really hard.
hmm
Yeah.
part of the agency that I started, I have a lot of freelancers that I'm like picking from or able to have work on some projects for some of my clients, and it's fun because I'm starting to realize now that people hadn't worked together before, and so I've got dream teams from these different companies, and there's maybe one that's helping me with something else, and another with another project, and they get together. I'm like, oh, I've never met so and so. I'm like, oh, but you guys are so cool. Like you should be the dream team here, and it's just like. It's just really fun because yeah, I've not managed to every time I go to a new team, I'm like, you guys are the best ones. And I just keep being blessed with amazing people to work with. So
That is a blessing indeed. That is
we could talk about clearly our teams all day. Okay, so where was I? Um, where have you seen marketing make the biggest impact, especially in terms of deal velocity or brand trust, or maybe just like new markets or category creation, I guess, too?
wow. Wow, wow. Well, I'm going to go down a bit of a tangent on the category creation, because I think that, well, at least this is my thought. I think working in the startup environment where people keep inventing something new, it always sort of ends up being synonymous to let's create a new category. And I think when you're a very young company and you basically have like a funding or even not that, to come up and say, I want to create a category is I just think and actually I have to fault board members on this because it's always like, oh, this is such a great thing, you have to become a category, get marketing to become a category. And I'm thinking even if we did have unlimited budget, we don't. The amount of effort that you have to put into explaining what a new category, I mean, I don't have to explain this to you, you're a marketer. So um I think that I actually think that the biggest impact that marketing has is probably not just in the initial demand gen, it's the nurture part of I call it customer marketing because I think that in the end, you spark interest, someone says yes, there are places where you even give it for free, right? But then being able to continuously identify what is going to make someone happy about a product and be an advocate for the product. I think that's sort of that fine line between customer success and marketing, even though customer success work with the customer
Mhm.
to try and be happy with the product. I think it's marketing that has that ability to amplify that happiness, right? And so I think that's where I would feel marketing has the most impact. It's after that initial touch, that interest point, it's either helping them make that leap into actually buying, and even after they've bought it,
Mhm.
becoming an advocate for us. I think that's just phenomenal. So
That's
that,
amazing.
yeah.
I've spent some time in professional services industries and top of funnel doesn't do much unless you have referrals or trust, and that life cycle is long. And so when you say, the partnership and the marketing effort behind customer success and finding those champions, I feel that in my bones because you could do all the brand awareness and top of funnel in the world, but unless they hear it from their peers, they're not going to bite.
Mm. Exactly. Exactly. So developing advocacy, like one of the, I think that, and this is where, where does customer marketing fall in? Is it product marketing? Is it demand gen?
Mhm.
Is it corporate marketing?
I
It's
actually don't know where,
nowhere, right?
yeah.
And I think I sort of it has its own sort of niche, I guess. Maybe we develop like another pillar because I think developing customer advocacy, and I have to tell you, this is also a funny story, that when I joined, so I joined from cyber, and cyber, it's almost impossible to get people to really want to talk about the product because it's a cybersecurity product and you don't want anyone to know what cybersecurity solution you're using to protect whatever it is. So that was its challenge and its own. But when I entered medicine, I mean healthcare, and was working with radiologists, they were so happy to talk about what they were doing and the research, and they were so proud. And part of medicine, by the way, and teaching facilities in particular, is standing on a podium and saying, look, this is the newest and greatest that we've been doing. Look at how this is impacting patients' lives. It was so amazing to just grab them and
Hmm.
help them advocate, and that's a lot of work, right? So
Hmm.
maybe it's the closest to product marketing because you're creating the slides, you're practicing with them. And I did it here. It was very funny when I joined. We already had someone who was using us and loved us. He just needed the to formulate that and to practice it with me and talk about it. And then he stood on the stage, and our co-founder, he was like, I've never heard anyone talk about it like that. And I was like, but he was anyway, so I think that's a very special part of marketing, I think, sort of
Hmm.
customer marketing.
I love that. That's great. All right. You've worked with Israeli tech and helped companies expand internationally. Tell us about how brand play and your strategy and how you were emerging and, sorry, how you, especially in emerging and skeptical markets where differentiation is key. I can reread that if you want. I was
Yeah, let's reread
too
that.
busy listening to you. Okay, I'm gonna reread it. Um, you've worked with Israeli tech and helped companies expand internationally. How does brand play into your strategy, especially in emerging or skeptical markets where differentiation is key?
So thank you for that question. I like talking about international marketing a lot because this goes back to what you said in the beginning of, what you were researching, I think, in college about, cultural
Ethnography.
differences, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I led a team of field marketers. So first of all, like as much as I love customer marketing, I love field marketing as well. And the reason I love field marketing, I grew up in field marketing way, 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 way back in this big company that I joined, but it there is a difference between each region and culturally how people make decisions. And I'd spent a lot of time trying to figure out that balance. But when you're a large company, again, we were by then, 500 people, and we were spanning the world. We were a business unit of 500 within a 15,000 people company, and we had corporate marketing, 15,000 people, and our unit was 500 people, and we had our own little corporate marketing. It was becoming really confusing because corporate marketing were churning out all this material, and and they were not even part of my little marketing. Like I had the bigger, and there was this thing, do you enforce what corporate marketing is doing on a region?
Mm.
And and I don't think we should enforce anything on anyone, but I think the lessons that, or my main takeaway is field marketers are very crucial. You should find a field marketer who is, again, a jack of all trades, like strategic enough to work with the regional salesperson and be their local VP,
Hmm.
marketing. That's just what they are. And good field marketers know how to translate, not just language wise, but the corporate material. And so be very, like, we'd had a calendar, and the calendar included some corporate stuff that had to come out, every quarter or something. But everywhere else, it was up to the field teams to come up with their culturally adaptable campaigns.
Hmm.
Um, so that's sort of one part where I believe that each region needs their own freedom in understanding how to make a decision. But having said that, this is another, again, one of the companies that I work for. Um, we'd coined a term called software monetization. Today, people know about it, but this is again almost 20 years back, because our business unit was the cyber part of our business unit was software licensing and protection. So we actually went deep into the core of the software and were able to protect it. At the
Hmm.
time, there were, I don't know, no one remembers this, but there were actual CDs you had to put in, and you had to connect like a little piece of hardware, and only then they would work. Like these were real high value software at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and so we wanted to say we're in a business of software monetization. So no one understood. Like the Japanese, the Koreans, the Chinese, the Germans, they were all like, this means nothing. This like we're not gonna use it. We're gonna continue being who we are. So that was a big, big struggle.
Hmm.
Um, and it ended up, I mean, this was a corporate marketing decision, and so everyone had to align. But where it didn't fit, they were like, okay, this is software monetization. It's written in English, even you're in Japan. We're going to continue thinking of it in the Japanese way that we were thinking about it before, but it did help, apropos category, create a category in the end that actually sort of
Oh,
helped
okay.
helped us with our marketing in the end. But I'm just saying that sometimes there are corporate decisions that we probably have to trust.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the execution has to be very, very regional.
Yeah, that makes me think about when I first started in my career. I was at a very large company, at one that you mentioned. And um, you know, we were the corporate global, and everything that we created then was translated and localized. And every region globally had to use those campaigns, as you were just expressing. But that framework and that model doesn't work. I mean, you can localize and translate something, but the culture's values and how people make decisions are so vastly different that it's almost like I'm thinking about it, and I haven't thought about this before this conversation. We never did the step of personas for each of those. We made the North American global campaign for North America, and we just said, okay, go localize and translate. We never actually did persona work before we sent it out to the regions.
And I actually took a lot of pride in showing how we did very different campaigns in each country, and actually entered through different personas because I think that shows real marketing value, right? If you're able to say, okay, I get it, I get the value, but I'm going to push with this in this region and push with this in this region and push with this in this region, they're very different. And I think it's so, in my mind, backwards to believe that everyone,
Yeah.
the same. It's just a question of translating. We're all different, even within one
Hmm.
country. Imagine, across. And I'll just give one little example about these cultural differences from a management perspective. So we had China, Japan, and Korea as our Asian offices, and the Chinese, they were all women, and the Chinese woman had been working for the company for many, 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 many years. And the Korean woman was relatively new, and so was the Japanese woman. And I had I had so many other field marketers and everything. And I said, look, to the Chinese woman who I valued very highly, I said, can I just make you the head of the region? Because I'm trying to sort of make, not so many people reporting to me. And she said, and again, this is not, I mean, it's a while back. She said that she feels that culturally this would not be accepted,
Mm.
and that she prefers not to lead the region because she thinks the other regional personas would find it hard to report into her. And this shocked me. This
Yeah.
shocked me. I was like, but we work to get, like I would never imagine any of them behaving any differently if they had reported into you. And she was like, I think they will, and I think it's just gonna. She was very practical. She said it's just going to cost her management time and cycles that are not going to help her with her work, and she prefers not to do it. So I can just say that if we think that our culture and the way we, live in the Western world is applicable just because we say so, I mean, I could have made such a mistake, right?
Hmm.
And ended up having low performers in three regions without knowing why.
Hmm.
She wasn't that open, and just done what I'd said. And so I think it's
Very
very important
courageous
to
of
really
her to say
understand.
that.
Very courageous, fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So much that you just don't even think about. You don't spend time on, and you find out something as I mean, it is a big deal, but as small as that, and a request that you made, and you would think it would be so joyous for her and a celebration for her, but yeah.
It's
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
Um, As someone who's led marketing through multiple growth phases and funding stages, how has your perspective on marketing changed as you've grown into the global leadership roles?
So, um, I don't know if my perspective on marketing has changed. It's maybe it's the perception of marketing at various stages of
Mm.
growth. And a great example that I always give, and I give presentations that are called marketing for founders to like launch pads and whatever. And and I start the presentation with a picture of my previous CEO. And we were pretty big by then. I relocated to New Jersey with this company with my family, and we were back in Israel with the whole team. And then they were asking, questions with the CEO. And so someone said, what was your most strategic decision that you're proud of, and what was the strategic mistake that you wish you would have, in hindsight, not or done differently? So he said that the strategic decision was, our enterprise approach, whatever, was a product led. And he said his biggest mistake from a strategic perspective was that he didn't realize the importance of product marketing 2 years back. And I remember going, oh my God, like I have been talking to you about the need for product marketing for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it just took him that long to understand. This goes back to the original question, what each part of marketing does. And also, when you're in massive, crazy growth and everyone's doing everything, you can't understand that actually everyone's doing everything because we're all running around like, hamsters on a wheel. But there are expertises. And eventually, when you grow from that crazy manic phase of whatever to, okay, we have more than one product offering. We have more than one salesperson. We have more than, we have to start disseminating our information and creating our information and matching personas and creating a lot of sales enablement tools and understanding customer needs and feeding them down to right. Like there's all of this that we need to do as we grow. So I think my biggest observation is and my advice always is to flag this as early as you can. So when you're in those growth phases,
Mhm.
the initial growth phase, we always joked about it with my team was, how did we do this on our own? Like we've doubled the team and how did we do it on our own? But the truth is we didn't really, I mean, we did it, but we didn't do it as well as we could have. And we didn't support growth at that
Mhm.
speed or at that complexity because you do slow down. You can't keep quadrupling your growth. And when you slow down, you're actually sort of expanding, you're going deeper. Maybe you're, utilizing your customer marketing now. Like there are other things that you're doing. So I think that would be my most important observation is that as companies grow, it's harder, it's the challenge to justify growing marketing as well, not as the perception of, hey, you did this for two people, why do you need 10? So I think
Right.
that's the biggest observation I think for growth.
So I am one of those crazy people who absolutely love a good startup. Like I love the grit and I like running like a hamster on a wheel, like you said, but it does hit you and you have to be able to like pivot just the way that you're thinking about it. You have to pivot your strategy. You have to stop and pause and you have to really kind of slow down before you can keep growing it. What is going into a company, just out of curiosity? What's something that you get really excited about? Like, do you like the crazy stage? Do you like that organization when they start to scale a little bit and like kind of fixing stuff? Like, what's your favorite?
Oh, I keep asking myself. I think I like the building from scratch because I think I feel that then your expertise seems to be more valued, which
Mm.
is not always true, by the way. But I think coming in and as a person who had done this before, um, and also, even if you haven't, you're the only, I mean, they're bringing in someone to do marketing. So they're expecting you to do lots of things and then you can take it wherever you want, right? I think fixing a team, and like I said, I did this prior, like, 20 years ago, for 10 years, has its own challenges. I think they're more team related and people related, than they are to creativity and invention. And so I think if you'd ask me, I think I like that initial
Yeah.
creativity and invention. Yes, hamster on a wheel.
Yeah. It is it it takes a certain type of person to
It
like
does.
that.
It does.
But I do feel like in marketing, if you get yourself in companies that are so vastly big, unless you're doing something on the side to actively stay engaged in the ways of working with marketing, you can lose it very quickly.
You just become a cog. And again, that's the example I always give when I joined the larger company. I was like, oh, okay, I'm leading marketing. So I'm going to do this and this and this. And people, and then I got corporate saying, no, we do this. And then another person said, no, we do this. And I was like, okay, what do I do? Like, if you're doing this and you're doing this. So, you had to wiggle your way in. But I think
Yeah.
the larger you grow, but again, justfully, right? I guess you need a large corporate marketing function if it's 15,000 people and you're acquired. And by the end, I mean, after 10 years, we were acquired yet again by another company with 70,000 people. Like that's just, you can't, the whole structure changes. So for me, 70,000 people was, oh, wow, it's just a bit
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've left massive companies before because I wouldn't be able to, can't do the push-ups with the team. Like I just couldn't get involved in the way that I wanted. But I also will say, that's why my hobby is marketing too. And I'm doing this podcast with you now because it brings me joy and it also helps me just learn. Like I'm so very much right now in this moment enjoying hearing your perspective, enjoying hearing your experience. And so thank you. And we still have a couple more questions, but
Thank
I
you.
get what you mean about the large companies.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so this is future thinking. What strategic shifts are you watching closely over the next 12 to 24 months, especially in areas like international marketing, AI, or demand gen for regulated industries?
Oh, wow. So for regulated industries, I think the shift is Um, and again, I can allude to healthcare in particular and the FDA. So when we started the solution with ADOC, um, I think like just a couple of years prior, FDA were used to approving machinery, and it took like 5 or 6 years. And we did a lot of work with the FDA to say to sort of restructure the thought process because you can't wait for 5 years with software. It's just in 5 years, like 7 million other things have happened to software. So you have to sort of adapt. And so I think the FDA, at least in this regulated space, has really taken a good step forward. Again, I'm not talking about the current administration. I haven't, dug myself deeper into that yet. But I think in general, um, receptiveness to shorter cycles, but not on account of safety. And I think somehow also COVID ended up contributing, whether in a good way or not, because, think of the vaccinations that were cleared in a year.
Hmm.
Like that's, there are conspiracy theories about, what happened and were they really just or not. But I'm saying that I think the regulators in general are aware that AI needs to go through faster cycles. Having said that, there's a lot of this sort of fud around, is it safe? Is it this? Is it this? And putting up guardrails. Um, I prefer that narrative, and it's there because again, that's part of the regulator's job is to put guardrails up, right? So I think there has to I feel we are at a good balance so that there are guardrails of how you need to prove your efficacy and that patient safety isn't impacted. Um, but I think so. That's what I think from a regulated perspective, and I think in AI in general, um, I'm super excited about AI. Like I think this is
Yeah.
going to take us leaps and bounds into the future, and I think that if we don't fear it and embrace it in an intelligent way, and it's all about how we interact with it in the end. Um, I think it's going to be phenomenal. I do think though that it's questioning how we used to work. Like I've found that I can barely write anymore on my own. Like I really need to ask ChatGPT or Claude for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then and I'm thinking, have I lost an ability? Um, but then I sort of say, you know what, I haven't. I can still have a discussion with this machine, and the machine can help me formalize my thoughts and I can sort of write them down. And so I guess that was a bit of a convoluted way to say that. I think the regulator is accepting that AI and software should get sort of a different approach from a go-to-market perspective. And I think the regulators are adapting. So that's sort of what I would say about that.
That's so interesting. I've recently read something somewhere that in certain high schools, instead of asking kids to write papers, they're having them actually do something on ChatGPT for a paper and then bringing it into class and editing it and teaching them like to find the errors and to find the resources for it because they've realized that they can't ask children or teenagers to just write an article because they'll go use ChatGPT. But in that same sense, it shows you that all of those algorithms that you put, the coding that you put into them and the algorithms that you build and the workflows that you build, those are necessary. You can't just throw stuff into any AI. You have to have a person behind it somewhere. And I think it's going to be really exciting because the people that can be behind this AI and the algorithms that we can build around it could be really cool and helpful.
Absolutely. And I think I spent a lot of time again in my previous company talking about bias and I mean, again, helping people accept that AI is not dangerous and scary, and that a lot of this sort of, again, fad about the bias goes to the people who train it, right? Like you said, there are people behind it. And I always say, if you expose a child to a community that is only, white women, they won't know that anything but white women exist in the world. And so the same with AI. If you're only teaching it on a limited set, then that is the output. And you as an AI developer or whoever it is, has to be responsible, and understand that in the end, there are people out there who are going to take this as the truth. And so that's where you get all that FUD, right? But we're aware of it. I mean, we're already used to it. And I was giving a lecture about this to college students at Northeastern, and I was playing a virtual nurse. And the company put a lot of effort into making it was a her machine be empathic, and they hated it. They were like, why is this robot pretending to be human? I prefer.
Mhm.
With all the fact that everyone's like accepting that AI is like writing for us, and there is some skepticism in a healthy way, so I
Mhm.
think that's also something that's worth.
Wow. Okay. Last question. What's the hill that you're willing to die on when it comes to marketing leadership or building high performing teams? What belief do you hold even when others might push back?
Wow. Wow. I, I don't think it's a marketing thing. I think it's a cultural thing. Um, I would die on a cultural hill.
Mm,
Um, I think managing in a fear environment and in a disrespectful environment is is the hill that I would die on,
mhm.
because I can't do my job that way. I think people have to feel heard and people have to feel valued, and does like everything else will be fine. So
Empowerment.
yeah, that's back to my empowerment. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
I mean,
it's
you
not
were
a marketing thing I would die for, because
right.
marketing, what I do, but in the end we're people, and we can't do our job without good people who feel good. So I think that's the hill I would die on.
And you spend so much time in your day job, right? And if you're anything, which I can tell, like if you're in a role that requires passion, which marketing absolutely does, you take that home. You're thinking about it all the time. You sometimes get the most cool idea for a campaign at the beach with your family when you're on PTO. Like
True, true, true.
if you don't have that culture to support that, then it's just
Agreed.
life's too short.
Agreed. Agreed.
YOLO. I think they say YOLO. Oh, well, Ariella, it was so wonderful. So wonderful. Such a light in my day just talking to you. I know that this has a purpose with the podcast, but I'm just really grateful to have met you and hear your experience. And you're just so intelligent and so brilliant. And you've just been such a gift to this podcast. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. You're humbling me. Thank you, Samantha. It was lovely talking to you. I loved it. It was such a great conversation. Thank you.